Hi everyone, today is January 6, 2019, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is Green Ranger.
And I'm Deck Tech.
Happy New Year. It's 2019 in Duel Links. The new box came out for New Year's, I think New Year's Eve, and we talked about the cards last time, and it's funny, the new cards immediately had an impact on the meta. We're seeing them on the ladder, we're seeing them on tournaments. In addition to that, we've got a bunch of things going on. We finished up the Duelist Chronicles event. Spunky Jaden is back as well. And this episode, we're going to talk about some new cards we're seeing, and also the two new archetypes from that box we just mentioned. So, a lot to cover, yeah.
Yeah, we should have more strongly emphasized that because I wasn't buying the new box, it was pretty much guaranteed that it would have an impact on the meta, because that's how it always happens. So just keep that in mind for future sets. And whenever I'm not buying a box, it's probably going to be a good one.
And also, I think I spent most of the time saying how good Fableds were. And they didn't even show up. It's the other two archetypes I didn't really understand, so that's what happened.
Yep, there you go. Your material experts here. So,
yep, we're correcting it this week, and we're going to talk about how good those decks are and how basically the basics of those decks. Yep. So, Deck Tech, where are you this week?
The reason why we were postponed this week was because I had a big thing in real life here at my place, and so we spent all week. Kind of just whenever I got home from work, I would usually be running errands or cleaning up or prepping for it. And then all of yesterday was spent doing like final preparations and then the event. And so I haven't been able to play a ton, but I really like the rank rewards for this month. And so I did try to sneak in some games on the ladder. I've been using Masked Heroes in that time, because it's one of the better decks that I have, and because I want to level up Akiza, because I want or not specifically to level her up, but I want the skill, What Grows in the Graveyard, and still haven't gotten it, which is a bit of a bummer, but I'm doing okay on the ladder, having fun. So, and now that event's over, I'm probably going to hopefully be able to play a little bit more and have something cool to talk about next week or something.
Wait.
What about you? What's up?
I hit King of Games in December. It was pretty much...
What?
Yeah, King of Games. There's actually a fun fact about this King of Games. It was my 6th overall, and I realized I had 3 with machines and 3 with zombies. So, if there's some, zombie machine thing going on, I'm jumping on. But I hit it the day before New Year's Eve, so it's like the night of December 30th or whatever. So frankly, it was not very competitive. And I did it in 96 games. That's not accounting to all the games I spent playing Tristan Vampires, which got me to Legend, but that was pretty much the Platinum round. And I guess I'll talk about that. Actually, first I'll talk about, I also spent all my gems. After the King of Games, when the new box came out, I spent all my gems. I bought through the new box once, and then a little more. And that was all my gems. And it was kind of funny, I was missing one of the tuners, the Karakuri tuners. And I had 400 gems, and usually I buy them in 500 gems. I never, buy 8 packs. But I bought 8 packs, and the Karakuri tuner was in the last pack. Like, I literally could not have played it had I not had that last pack. So, I finally got me enough cards to play the deck. And I think I think I lost a promotion match to 5 yesterday. So, I'm still in plat 4 right now. But, it's doing decently. So I'm going to keep playing Karakuris this month. See how it goes.
Cool.
Yep. Now I'm going to talk about the King of Games report. And this deck, if you hadn't seen on Twitter, is a Synchro Vampire deck. And previously I played a Vampire deck, but that one had Jinzo in it, I believe. And a couple months later, I have this one with Junk Synchron instead. So there's one. First of all, you use the Akiza skill. I have the Akiza skill, what grows in the graveyard. So typically the goal is to have Junk Synchron out, you get the 2 out, and then you have Armadides. And there's only one Junk Synchron, so it's not really a true, I'm all in on Synchros deck. It's just one card out of 22 cards in my deck. So it's an option, not the win condition, and typically it's just the Vampire deck. I do state that Junk Berserker came out second most important in the Synchro list. It did win me some games, obviously, just by subtracting attack. And Ancient Fairy Dragon I did use a few times with to deal with UAs. I think Stardust Dragon I may have used once or twice. Gigantic Castle I never used at all. Those are the other cards that were in the extra deck that filled it out. And so I run all the core Vampire cards, but I don't have Vampire's Desire. I have said in the past that this is the Vampire card I don't like the most. And that's probably because I don't know how to use it the right way, but it was cut from my deck. And I do have 2 copies of Grace. Previous King of Games deck only had 1 of each monster, but this one has 2 Graces. And basically, I was going all in with Grace. I used Samurai Skull to dump to dump a Retainer. And then I used the Retainer to bring back, and I dumped the Grace for the Vampire Takeover. And then I try to get Grace out during my opponent's end phase, so I could use the ability immediately instead of the Grace getting hit by a Paleozoic Canadia when I try to normal summon it or something. So I was going all in there, and sometimes I got it out earlier. Vampire Takeover doesn't activate if you have no monsters on the board, so if they clear my 2 monsters, my Grace can't come out at all. So sometimes I just do it, and it's okay if it dies because I have another one in my deck. So that was the goal. And I used Grimson a lot less because I was using Grace more. In my previous King of Games deck, I said how Grimson was the best card. Now it's kind of like third fiddle now. And Vampire Vamp was even better, actually, because people got those 2,000 attack monsters really fast with the Blue Eyes deck. So that was pretty much an auto win when they played that, and I got the Vamp immediately. So very good in that last month's meta. Another important decision I made, I originally had 2 Econs. I switched over to 2 Hey Trunades, and then I finally ended the deck with 1 each. This deck I bricked a lot, actually. Sometimes my hand was just all of my Tribute monsters and a Hey Trunade, so I lost games like that. And the Econ kind of settled that. And finally, I had 2 Mirror Walls as my back row, which plays around Hey Trunade. And even Armadides.
Nice, yeah.
That is all.
Good. Well, that's awesome, dude. Congrats. Obviously, I did not do nearly as well. You said you had like 97 wins. I had like 10 at the end of the month.
Well, I had 96, and then I was like, screw it. I only have 4 more games, so I played 4 King of Games games to get the UR ticket. I ended at exactly 100.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would have. At that point, you might as well.
Yeah.
But, cool.
So, we're going to talk about the new Meta Weekly, the first Meta Weekly of the year, number 53. This happened on January 1st, and the box came out the day before, and they immediately had an impact. Koa'ki Meiru became the most... they're tied with Control, 15 decks out of 85. But in the top 32, they led the way, 9 decks out of 32. So Koa'ki Meiru's our number 1 representation. Control decks, Vampires, Heroes are also here. Karakuri's came in, but not as strong as Koa'ki Meiru's, but they did have a pretty good impact as well.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's an impressive showing. They had, let's see, it says 8 people in the total deck breakdown, and then they brought 3 of those into the top 32, so obviously not quite as good, but that's still something still impressive for a first week showing for an archetype. It's always hard to tell how much is just because people don't know how to play against it, so it's going to go away over time, versus the flip side where the deck is not yet refined and it actually gets more powerful over time as people figure out how to make it better. So we'll see how it ends up for both of these decks, but both of them were off to a good start, at least in terms of representation.
Yeah, and if they didn't do anything to the tier list because I think they're waiting for a bigger sample size, but From what I could tell, Koa'ki Meiru would be slotted into tier 1, and Karakuri would be like a 3. Just from like the demarcation and how well they did here, and also in the King of Games, in this community specifically. They have like a different power level, from what I could tell.
Yeah, I think I would probably I would have the same guess. Like you said, they're probably waiting to get a little bit more data, and then that might change how they feel about it one way or the other. But that seems to be where they're panning out. I would be very surprised if these results weren't enough to make them think tier 1. If we continue to get results like these, I mean, where they're having number 1 representation and then number 1 representation in the top 32, and spoiler alert, also doing super well in the top 4. So this is definitely a deck to beat, at least in the immediate future. We'll see how, like I said, how it develops.
Yep. And it's just really crowded right now. There's the old archetypes that aren't going away, and then there's these 2 new ones. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting time.
Yeah.
First place, Bren Duke, Balance, Koa'ki Meiru. So, Balance makes a lot of sense because they run 3 Iron Cores and 3 of the new Diamond Cores. So they're almost guaranteed one of these spell cards. And they have this deck has most of the old monsters, so it's Sandman, Urnwright, and Maximus. And in the sideboard, there's the 2 new ones, Rooklord and Wall. Has 1 copy of Core Reinforcement. I've seen a lot more of this card. I mean, I've seen like 2s and 3s in other decks. And there's also seems to be a flex spot in the Koa'ki Meiru, so this one has a prototype instead here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can use the level 4 lower ones. You can tutor them out with the Urnwright, and so you can kind of just have the one-ofs with the Sandman and this flex spot, because the Urnwright and the Maximus are kind of the ones that you're relying on most. And then, like you said, the Balance works because you have those 6 spells, so you're going to get one of them, and then you just kind of... You can put more reinforcements, depending on how you build your deck, as we're about to see in a sec. And then you kind of just got some of those powerful traps that we use to control the board a little bit as well. So we're going to talk about the deck, like you said, in the Duel School a little bit more, but that's kind of one of the strengths of it, is that it has some plays on all levels, where it has some of those defensive plays, it has some of the comeback mechanics with the core reinforcement, has a lot of burst with the dragon, and with the special summons from Urnwright and stuff. But also you can just kind of play Urnwright and get a special summon and kind of just have solid, kind of like mid-rangey type plays, depending on how you draw your hand and everything.
Yeah. Second place, Grimjow, Last Gamble, Koa'ki Meiru. This is similar to a deck I faced last night. It looks similar to it. The Melody of Awakening Dragon can get you your 2 Maximuses immediately into your hand. There's Hey Trunades. There are the 6 cores as well. 3 core reinforcements, and then the flex spot has the Koa'ki Meiru Ice.
Yeah, so this one's fun because he's using the Last Gamble and the Melody of Awakening Dragon. He's using the 3 core reinforcements, so it's a little bit more of like a Reanimator burst combo style one. Has a little bit less of the kind of mid-range and definitely a lot less of the control aspects that we were talking about above, but it seems a lot burstier, a lot more of a OTK type feel. So it'll be interesting to see which of those 2 kind of gets a little more traction, sees more play.
And it's interesting, both of the decks have the Reckon Power in the sideboard. Like, I'm wondering, I guess they would use those against those extreme control archetypes. But Hey Trunade kind of does the same thing, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. Only one of them even runs the Hey Trunade, so I know that I faced the deck, I think just once, but once or twice, in those few games that I played on the ladder. And the Maximus does a little bit of that work too, because you can destroy 1 card per turn, and so that was something, cleared a little bit of the back row, so you maybe didn't feel like you needed as much, but I could definitely see it being a lot more important in Grimjow's list because of that OTK nature where you really want to make sure that you're clearing some stuff. I do note, of course, that if you're running Hey Trunade with traps, you need to kind of do that right. Because you don't want to bounce your own trap and set yourself back a turn unless you intend to or whatever. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you play it first, of course, it doesn't bounce it because it only returns the set spells and traps. But just don't mess that up.
Third place, Neji, Sealed Tombs, Destiny Heroes. This looks like a bit of a regular list, but they do use Offerings to the Doomed. It's starting to pop up in various decks, I think for Koa'ki Meiru, but they do have the reinforcement, so I'm not really sure what it's targeting for. And we are seeing the archetype evolve a little bit, but this seems like the older version to deal with the vampires because they have Sealed Tombs, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. It also, the Diamond Core protects against destroy effects, so I'm not sure if Offerings of the Doom is specifically for the Koa'ki Meiru. I think it's for other reasons. But yeah, this looks like a solid, kind of fairly standard list. I would probably just put 2 Synchro guys into this extra deck along with the Anki, just, I don't know, in case something weird happens and you somehow end up getting that. He doesn't run Econ though, so it's a lot less likely, and it's probably not really a main concern.
Yeah, they're just telling you they're playing Masked Heroes when they have 3.
Exactly, yeah. There's that too. I mean, I don't know. I guess he wasn't
Make
trying
him
to
quit.
hide it.
Make him quit, yeah.
Yeah.
Skill Shot, this is a very cool one. This is a Fields of the Warriors Masked Heroes deck, and this seems like the first time we've seen Diamond Dude. And this was a card that we thought was really cool when we first talked about it, over a year ago. But what it does is it excavates cards, and it could excavate a regular spell card, and it activates the card without its negative effects. So you could use, the Into the Void, Hey Trunade, and Storm in this deck. So this one also has 3 Offerings to Doomed, because this deck draws really well with the Into the Voids.
Very interesting. Yeah, so I've seen a couple attempts of trying to make Diamond Dude work. None of them have really seemed super successful, but this is really cool. I'd like to try it out because I love that card.
Alright, so that's the Meta Weekly. And now we are going to talk about... There's different sets of new cards. The first one we're going to talk about are the new ranked rewards. Ranked duels have been updated. And you can also get other powerful cards like Giant Orc, Evil Swarmer Lantern, Second Goblin, and even Lizard Soldier. So the first card, Avenging Knight Parshaf, is a level 8 fairy synchro, 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner light monster. So the material has to be a light monster, but the tuner could be anything. 2600, 2100. Once per turn, target a face-up monster your opponent controls, change its battle position. It has piercing. So, this card, I know you have a history of this archetype, but I'm playing Karakuri Burai, and changing battle positions is actually pretty decent in this meta. The difference is this one has to target a face-up monster, so it's kind of flipping them to defense mostly. And I have found that hitting things... Like, there are certain cards that have really low defense, like Anki, so it is limited by light monsters, though. So it's not going to be used in every deck.
Yeah, this seems like the type of... Like, you would just get one of them and put it into your list. You're not going to rely on it. You're not going to summon it multiple times, but every once in a while you're going to summon it. If your deck works, of course, with it, where the materials are such that you're likely to get it out and not have issues with that. The flipping to defense seems, seems fairly strong, especially since he has the 2600 attack, right? So that gets you over a lot of the big guys, including Blue Eyes and, of course, the Koa'ki Meiru that we just talked about. So I think that that's kind of an important stat break line right there that makes it something worth considering. Yep.
And also, Cosmo Brain's 2450, I think. Something like that.
It's less than 26 for sure. I don't remember what it actually is, but less than that.
Eats all of them.
Yes, exactly.
Gem Turtle. Gem Dash Turtle. 4-star rock. 0-2000 flip effect. It's a while since you've seen a flip effect, it feels like. You can add 1 Gem Knight fusion from your deck to your hand. So obviously this is a Gem Knight monster in the archetype, and this is, I have never played the deck, but is this the first tutor effect for the fusion card?
I think so.
Yeah, it seems like it is. And
Yeah.
it could, like, I've never played, so you could talk about it because you've played it, like, okay amount of the deck. It seems like it could lead to one-turn kill potential, because you're going to set this, hopefully the 4-star can't hit through 2000, you flip it over, and then you use it for the fusion, because you've got the card, and you can make, like, 2 fusions, right?
Yeah, let me actually look it up, because I forget, well, no, I won't, because that'll take too long, but, yeah, I played a lot of the deck. It's kind of like a fun tier 4 deck, so I play it when I feel like playing it on the ladder. And it's always been it's always been close. It feels like it's close, and it always has had that OTK potential as well. And this just feels like a solid card that could give it a little bit more consistency and perhaps be enough to get there. I probably not, but it could be. And this was one of the ones I was really excited to get, just because I want to have that ability. Right now, the way the deck works is you rely pretty heavily on Grass Looks Greener, because you use that to get the fusion material into your hand, or the fusion card, and also to activate I forget her name, the Lazuli or Lapu, whatever, the little one, who she returns one of your other ones when she gets sent to the graveyard. And so if you mill her off the top, then that's good too. So you'll get a Gem Knight or 2 back into your hand, and then you can get rid of her to bring back, banish her to bring back the fusion card, and then you start the fusion chain. You can usually do like 2 or 3 fusions on the turn and just OTK people that way if it all works out. It's a little bit fragile because you're using a lot of resources to get stuff out, so if they disrupt you in any way, then you could have just spent like 3 cards to get whatever, Widespread Ruined or something, or worse. But it's still fun and powerful, very bursty, and so I think there's some potential here, and any new tools for it I'm excited about, so I'm definitely going to try this guy out. Depending on what the fusion materials are, because like I said, I don't remember them off the top of my head, this may or may not be an issue, because it's just called Gem Turtle instead of Gem Knight Turtle or whatever.
Right.
I think some of them require like a Gem Knight monsters, so that might have been an intentional limitation on it to prevent it from being OP. I'm not sure, but I still am interested in it, and I'm still going to try it out.
Yeah, I myself was not sure if it counted as a Gem Knight. Like, I don't know what the fusion requirements were. Like, I just don't remember.
Yeah, me neither. And I've played the deck. But I do still think it's fun and worth considering, just to kind of give yourself that little extra consistency. The deck has a lot of ways you can build it, but it doesn't really have a ton of like just mandatory cards that you have to play, so there's some spots to play with the deck for sure.
Finally, the R ticket is Mist Valley Shaman. 3-star Winged Beast Tuner, 1200. Once per turn, you can return one other monster you control to your hand, have this card gain 500 attack until the end phase. So this card becoming 1700 isn't really important at all, so you could kind of forget that effect. There might be something you could do where you're bouncing the cards to your hand and then just drawing more cards or something, I don't know. But it is a Winged Beast Tuner, and that's what the Black Wings all use. We haven't seen the Black Wings get any play, but here's another tuner, which is not a bad thing at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you might as well. You're going to get the R tickets anyway, so you might as well have something new to use them on. Cool.
Yep. Alright, so next, the main event this week is Spunky Jaden. He's back. I actually didn't get all his rewards from last time. That's how much I cared about the event the first time. So I'm kind of chasing down a bunch of these cards. I haven't actually farmed them either, so I've just been auto dueling.
You naughty boy. Um, I have a farm technique that I've been doing. I've been using the what's it called, Dark Paladin method.
Right.
I tweeted something out from the show's Twitter, so you guys can check it out there. I apologize, I forget who it was who initially said it, but they had a couple lists, and the Dark Paladin is pretty much the same type of Dark Paladin thing that we've been doing, forever since Dark Paladin has been a type of farm deck. Um, just get the pieces, and eventually it's bigger than anything he plays, and you have to counter the fusions and a couple destruction spells, or else you end up losing your stuff. But if you do, then you just win at the end using a vassal and union attack. So it's fairly standard, fairly simple farm when it works. Of course, it relies on you getting 3 specific cards, so you have to run lots of copies of. I have like the 3 of the knight, and then the 3 searchers, and the 3 polymerization, and I guess the Dark Magician's kind of the one that's a little bit left out. But anyway, fairly standard list, fairly easy farm, although not the highest success rate, because it does rely on you getting all of those cards in your starting hand.
Right. The Twitter account is from Duel Links Lounge, who tweeted out that farming deck. Yeah, I have a history of playing Dark Paladin decks when I did farm, and it was like a really special deck, and it was like a way to minimize inconsistencies. But I haven't even used it, so no point in talking about it. Let's talk about his new cards. Of course, this includes some of the cards I mentioned I didn't get last time, so these are some of the Chrysalis cards, and Electrum as well, so there's a couple of new ones, 4 new cards to be exact this time. The first one is Elemental Hero Divine Neos, 12-star, 2500, 2500. I'm going to preface this by saying every week we seem to get an impossible card, and this one just like tops it all. Like, it's just ridiculous.
The most impossible of them all.
Yeah, it's just, no, every time. Must be fusion summoned by using any 5 Neos, Neospace, Neospatian, or Hero monsters, including at least 1 Neos, 1 Neospace, no, 1 Neos or Neospace, 1 Neospatian, and 1 Hero monster, and cannot be special summoned by any other way. You got that? That's clear?
Yes.
Once per turn, you can banish 1 Neos, 1 Neospace, Neospatian, or Hero monster from your graveyard. This card gains 500 attack. Until the end phase, it gains the banished monster's effects. So this card basically gains any ability from any Neos, Neospace, Neospatian, or Hero monster, and has 3,000 attack.
Well,
all it is.
That's good. Once you can get it out, or if you could ever get it out.
Yeah, we're going to need evidence to see this on the field.
Yeah, I don't know how often that's going to happen. Like you said, it's clearly not the strongest, just because the limitation is it's such a huge limitation on getting this guy out that it's going to be almost impossible to actually make it work. Seems like just a meme deck thing, or a challenge, because some people specifically like decks that are impossible to pull off, and just pulling off the impossible. So, I would say it's kind of just not for us, not for anyone who's trying to make a competitive deck, and more for people who want that kind of fun challenge meme thing.
I did face someone who played a Jaden deck. I forget if it was when I was going for King of Games, or was it this month, but they were playing like one of each of his monsters. It was very hilarious.
There you go.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know how it's supposed to work, but okay.
This one I actually like. Elemental Hero Core. Fusion monster requiring 3 elemental heroes, 2700, 2200, must be fusion summoned, cannot be special summoned other ways. Once per turn, when this card is targeted for an attack, you can make this card's attack double its current attack until the end of the damage step. At the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, you can target one monster on the field, destroy it. When this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, target one level 8 or lower elemental hero fusion in your graveyard, special summon it, ignoring its conditions. So 3 monsters isn't too difficult, I think, because you do have Miracle Fusion, so you could use the graveyard monsters as well. And there's no requirement on which ones you use. And its resurrection ability brings back the fusion monster, so you probably did fuse 2 monsters in the graveyard, and then you just have one in your hand. So I think this is the best elemental hero card we've seen. It just does a lot more than the other cards. It disrupts the board. It has that double its attack ability. It seems solid.
Yeah, it protects itself. Yeah, seems pretty decent.
Space Gift. Normal spell, draw 1 card for each different Neospatian name on the monsters you control. This is interesting for the fact it counts names, so a card that counts as another monster would draw 2 cards. So this could be some kind of like massive draw. If it's a card that has many names, it would be pretty sweet.
A card has many names.
Usually it's 2, like they count as another one, so it's like 2 names.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I like it.
And Contact. Normal spell, send all Chrysalis monsters you control to the graveyard. Special summon 1 monster from your hand or deck that is written in the card text of those cards. So it seems like they have a theme with names. That's kind of what these cards do. So it seems like a desperation play to get any Neospatian out from your deck. Any special summon from your deck type situation.
Yeah. And that's a big cost, and also just not a big enough payoff, right? Because none of the Neospatians are super impressive.
The sad thing is I don't really know what they do. Like, after all this time, I know the Glowmoss has, like, 3 abilities, but I can't name any of them. I just don't know what they do.
Yeah, when I said that, I was hoping that you would just agree and that there would be some sort of just understanding that, yes, you're right, these cards must not be good, because I don't actually remember what any of them do either.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Sad. Alright. So then the Pick a Gift campaign brings 2 new cards. One of them is of the old archetype that never made it, the Vylon. So this is Vylon Delta. 7-star Fairy Synchro, 1700, 2800. Requires a tuner and 1 or more non-tuner light monsters. So kind of like Parshaft, where you needed the material to be light. If this card is in face-up defense, during your end phase, you can add 1 equip spell from your deck to your hand. Unlike other... Well, it's kind of like Ancient Fairy Dragon, where you kind of want the card in defense mode, but you think of Synchros being faster and offensive monsters. This one you kind of want in defense, in 2800 defense, and then you tutor your equip spell. As I mentioned, Vylon's never really made it, so hopefully this helps them in that regard.
Yeah, it's an interesting card. I ended up picking it just because it's a new card, and it's like, sure, yeah, why not? But I'm not sure how much... It seems kind of just like a slow value play to me, where your intent is to get this guy out, and then you get an equip that makes him big the next turn, and then that next turn you get to attack with him, which is obviously not great. What you want him in is maybe abusing some of those equip cards that let you, I don't know, disrupt your opponent's monsters, maybe do some weird big bang shot tricks, or the ones that just kind of stall your opponent's monsters out so they can't attack. I'm not sure. I don't see a specific use for it, but it's a new card, so I went for it.
Yep. Another new card, Gen X Ally Chemister. 2-star machine tuner, 200, 500. You can declare one attribute, discard this card to select one face-up Gen X monster you control. That monster becomes that attribute. This effect can be activated during either player's turn. So this ability isn't really useful yet because we don't really mess around with attributes yet. We mess around with types sometimes, but not attributes. So it's not particularly useful, but it is that Dark Machine tuner. There are some cards that need that. I think that Gen X cards need machine tuners, so here we go.
Yeah, and it's, like you said, we don't maybe care about it yet, but that's definitely design space that can be explored going forward, so it might become relevant at some point in the future.
And it's a quick effect that you could do on your opponent's turn, so it's a tricky card.
Yeah. It's always better than the inverse, so that's cool.
Duelist Chronicles GX. It's still happening, contrary to what I thought. So the main thing to take away from this is you could grind it out for as many gems as you want, but don't burn yourself out doing that. Make sure you duel Yugi enough times, and he could be auto-dueled, so that's pretty good. Use your I don't know what those things are called, but those things, duel him 3 times, and you'll get the skill. No, you have to beat him 3 times to get Miracle Draw. And then you fight him until you get all your gems, and then you'll just get to the coins, and that's when you know when you could stop. You could keep fighting him for coins, but that's when I stopped. So,
challenge tickets is what they're called. Have it open. I've just been auto dueling it like the whole time because
call them challenge tickets.
Yeah,
they're like urns.
They are urns. They're definitely not tickets. It might have just been a typo or something. Like from last time they did this event.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, like, one of the acts is in Japanese, so I'm not surprised it's a typo.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I mean, so just to wrap up on it, the event was fine. I liked it more at the start, but now it I think it went a little bit too long where it seems to have grown a bit tedious. And at this point, I'm just trying to auto-duel through everything. I mean, I was kind of doing that before, but just trying to get through it at this point. But we did get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah.
Moderate amount of gems, which is always good, and then a couple new cards and stuff. So, it was pretty good in terms of as far as events go.
Yeah. They've taken enough feedback. I guess some people wanted it longer. I guess that's why it's longer, so that makes sense. And they put in a new event to take its place, so that's all we could really care for, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, as mentioned, it gave Miracle Draw, which gives you a Pot of Greed, so as long as you have an elemental hero in your graveyard by your 3rd turn.
Yeah, which is kind of an interesting thing. It's a little bit of like kind of flashiness because they could very well have just said like draw an extra card, but instead they got to put Pot of Greed in the game. So I think most of the time that's going to be pretty much equivalent, and but you get to run Pot of Greed, so that's fun for the memes.
Yeah, isn't it a +2 though? Because you're gonna draw it. I don't know if it's added to your hand.
I thought you draw the Pot of Greed instead of your normal draw.
Right, and then you could just get 2 cards from there.
Right,
like
and then you get the 2 cards from Pot of Greed. So the
-1
could have been just draw an extra card in your turn.
An extra card, yeah.
They wanted... I mean, sometimes it is relevant. There's certain... I mean, obviously you can counter this with a Magic Jammer or something, or there's other... Not that anyone runs Magic Jammer, but there's other cards as well that care about...
Spell books, yeah.
You playing spells and whatnot. So it's not completely irrelevant. You could even get it back, right? There's a couple cards that let you get spell cards back. So, there's a lot of value there. It's fun.
Oh, you could use it for the bamboo deck. Isn't Magical Stone Excavation, you get the magic card back? So you just keep doing it. Yeah.
Yep, there you go. That's one of them. So, hey, maybe new meta. I mean, people already have it, and it's kind of proven itself not to be new meta, but maybe new meta.
Yep. I mean, Karakuris have a million Pot of Greeds in the deck, so I guess that's why they let it loose. It's gonna be in the next box. Watch.
Oh my God.
You are in the next mini box.
That'd be hilarious. No, you're gonna have to pay like $7 to get it.
With the new mat.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So for the rest of this episode, we're gonna open up the Duel School again and talk about 2 new archetypes that made it. We can't say they made it, but they're here this week, and that's Koa'ki Meiru and Karakuri. We split it up just because I played Karakuris, and
I'm the other host.
You went over them last time, right? I think I gave them to you last time or something to go over in the Gaia Genesis box. Yeah,
that might be.
Both of them have really like clunky names, so it's kind of annoying. But We'll talk about both, and as mentioned before, they on the early running. They seem to be on different power levels. So Karakuris are currently weaker, from what I could see.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm gonna talk about Karakuris. They seem viable. The first day, 2 people from Duel Links meta got King of Games with it, so it seems flashy, but I don't think anyone's got it since. They all played Koa'ki Meirus instead. How it works, and this is the first deck to rely on synchros as the win condition. I think when we were going over that trap card that uses the monster as the synchro, I was saying how there's no deck that's really a synchro deck, but this is the synchro deck. They can't win with their monsters just on their own. So, as such, this deck always uses level augmentation. That seems to be the skill. And luckily, a number of 5D's characters use it, so you could pick from 4 or 5 different characters. And how it works is the monster on the field gains levels or stars up to 1 in your hand, and that's useful for synchros for flexibility. So,
yeah, flexibility and like ramping, right?
Ramping for the synchros, yeah.
Yeah.
And the most important cards are Karakuri Komachi Model 224 Nanishi, which is the tuner, the 3-star tuner. And then the worker, Karakuri Merchant Model 177 in Shichi. Those are the 2 most important cards. And you have 3 of each in the deck. So 3 plus 2 is 5. So it's a good idea to have Armadides, Keeper of Boundaries, because that's the best synchro monster we have in the game. And level augmentation comes in. You get a merchant. You add another one to your hand, so it's 2. And then you add 2, so it's 3 plus 4 into 7. And that's what you use to get Karakuri Shogun Model 00 Burai. And that card has 2600 attack. You can special summon another monster from your deck. And that adds up to over 4000. You could have other synchros as well. And you don't just have to use it for Burai, so sometimes they have face-down cards. You want to use Armadides instead, or in the right situation, Stardust Dragon. I've found Stardust Dragon to be played more than the Vampire deck. And Junk Berserker doesn't work because you're not using Junk Synchron, so there's certain cards. I was telling Deck Tech how I couldn't find the right monster because I feel like Ancient Fairy Dragon was not doing enough, so we need another 7. And Lightning Warrior obviously is not good enough, so you kind of need another level 7 synchro. I'm trying to look for another level 7.
Mm-hmm.
And the deck's all about card advantage. That's the most important thing. Karakuri Anatomy is the Pot of Greed card that decks run 2 or 3 of. And basically how the card works is once there are 2 counters on the card, you could send it to the graveyard to draw 2, or if it has 1 counter, you could send it to the graveyard to draw 1. There are desperation plays where you need to draw 1 card instead of 2 when you're about to lose, so they change positions all the time, so every time one of your monsters changes positions, it would add a counter. And 3 merchants, 3 caches, you could tutor a bunch of stuff. Usually you want to use your merchant to get another merchant for the next turn, or if you're trying to do some cool play, you get 2 anatomies out and then you draw 4 cards in a turn or something. In addition to your tutors. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I've had like 8 cards left in my deck on like the first turn. I've done stuff like that. Because they draw so well, you could run Offerings to the Doomed. That's their main removal card. And I was saying how I lost games because I didn't know Offerings to the Doom only hit face-up cards, so I had to learn that the hard way.
Oh no, like you killed your own monster?
Yeah. To kill their set.
Oops.
And what you do is typically use the Burai to flip their monster. If it's set, you flip it face-up, and then you use the Offerings to the Doom to clear it. And that's the main one-turn kill ability. Hey Trunade, Synchro Summon to Burai, get a 4-star, that adds up to 4,000. That's it. Hopefully you don't draw your 4-star monster, so you can't special summon it, so that's why I usually have 2. And that's the one-turn kill of this deck. And Finally, this deck plays unconventionally, so there's a lot of things to learn. I have lost plenty of games just by playing an extra monster, and then I'm forced to attack with it. A monster with 500 attack hitting into a defense, and I lose. That just happens sometimes. And you're going to be taking damage because you are forced to attack with those weaker monsters. You could use Burai to flip them into defense, or you also take less damage when you're hit because those monsters flip to defense occasionally, and your opponent doesn't know, so they're hitting into a defense monster. Sequencing into tutoring is very important, so sometimes it's like managing resources for this turn versus the next turn. So usually the play is merchant into merchant. You want to get another merchant in your hand so you could keep the next turn going, unless you have the one-turn kill figured out. Typically, you want to draw your cards and then do the one-turn kill I mentioned before. That's how Karakuri's work in a nutshell.
Nice. Cool. So, the Koa'ki Meiru I've faced them once or twice. I've seen a bit of it and read up on it. So, the basic idea is that as we saw just from reviewing the cards, the idea of Koa'ki Meiru generally is that you have monsters that are above their cost, but they have a downside, and usually the downside is you have to either reveal something or discard something at the end of your turn, or the monster is destroyed. And we tried them out when they first came out in Gaia Genesis, but it didn't really work out. And they got a huge addition in the most recent set of Diamond Core Koa'ki Meiru that helps them out. And what that card does is it allows them to both tutor for whatever they want, and also protects them from being destroyed for a turn, which helps you with combat tricks like Widespread Ruin or just getting Wall of Deed into something, or whatever it is. And it negates that downside where you don't have to worry about revealing something or discarding something because your guys aren't going to get destroyed. So that's a very powerful effect. As we mentioned at the time, tutor effects are always susceptible to being broken. Looks like this one might have gotten there because it's a tutor and more. They also got Core Reinforcement, which was the reanimation card that we were talking about before, which can be powerful. As we mentioned, in certain lists, it seems like it's more important than others, but you have cards like just all of your Koa'ki Meirus at the end of turn want you to discard something, and some of those things will be other monsters, but mostly the Earn Knight, you use it as part of like your tutor effect for Earn Knight, who's another tutor. So, more than one tutor leads to a lot of consistency, but part of the Earn Knight's cost to activate his skill is that, or his ability effect, let's go with effect, is that you have to discard a card, so you can do that and get it back. And the same with that Kaiba card that we were talking about, which is pretty sweet, just maximizing all the tutor effects. And anyway, with those new additions, the deck has a lot of burst and a lot more consistency, so that's nice. When we were reviewing the set last week, we thought that perhaps the Koa'ki Meiru Rook Lord would try to be the boss monster of the set, but that was mostly because we kind of forgot about the Maximus from Gaia Genesis, and that is what the deck actually ended up revolving around, which is good. It's a stronger card, a lot burstier, and a bit bigger. The effect when it goes off is roughly equivalent. It is a 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense that can be special summoned by banishing an Iron Core of Koa'ki Meiru from your hand, and it lets you destroy one card on your opponent's side of the field per turn, regardless of its position or if it's a spell, trap versus a monster. So super versatile removal, as well as just a beat stick that you can frequently get out for essentially for free. The banishing the Iron Core was a bigger downside before in the old version of the deck because we didn't have the extra Diamond Cores. And so the whole deck kind of revolved around the Iron Core, so getting rid of one of them was a big pain for you. But now you're fine with it. And so you can go in for OTKs with this 3,000 attacker plus just whatever you normally summon. Or you can just kind of use it for once per turn. You're chipping away at them by your attack is bigger than whatever they're doing, and you're clearing their back row or clearing some pesky face down guys or whatever it is. So you can kind of, like we talked about before, depending on how you want to build it and how your hand plays out and whatnot, you can be kind of a bursty OTK deck. You can kind of have some mid-range potential, or you can just, I don't know, play on whatever, a little defensively with those extra spells and traps if you have those extra slots. So you can play on whatever plane you need to, depending on how you build your deck, how you want it to go, and how you draw. It feels a little bit like the Blue Eyes deck in that sense, except it has 3, maybe more skills. We're already seeing some people running Balance, Last Gamble, and Grit as a couple examples. And so you don't have to run specifically one guy, Arcana, to run it. But the same type of feel where you can run some removal, you can run some comeback mechanics, you can run some burst potential. And it seems like instead of having just a 3,000 attacker, you can have a 3,000 attacker that also destroys the back row. So, hey, that works out nicely for them. And once you kind of see the whole picture of all those, it's not too surprising that with multiple tutor effects, some cards that synergize really well, just big guys that you can burst out and also disrupt the back row and your opponent's plans, it's not a huge surprise that it's one of the more powerful decks. At least in its initial showing, and maybe it'll continue to develop, and we'll see more of it.
Yeah, I'm glad the deck hasn't been completely figured out yet, but I do know this is the deck that everyone is complaining about already.
Already, yep.
Yes. We've entered the coin flip meta.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem. They're definitely calling it a coin flip deck. Especially within the mirror matches, right?
Right, yeah.
Just and the reason why it feels so coin flippy is when you have Balance, you have like a 50-50 chance of getting specifically the card that you want, if it's one of the spells or monsters. And then the one spell you can use to tutor out your other monster. So it's not exactly 50-50, but it definitely feels like, depending on how your balance works out, the person with the better balance results ends up winning. And so I could see how that could get pretty frustrating. I mean, we felt pretty bad about a similar situation with other decks in the past where it's just like, okay, well, if you draw your stuff, you win. And if I draw mine, then I do. It takes away agency, and it makes the game feel not as fun. Like the choices don't matter if it's all comes down to the draw. But there's a little bit more to it than that. And I think probably 2 tutor effects in the same deck is too many, and I expect at some point, if it continues to be an issue in power level, the issue is already there in terms of people perception of it. So if there's a power level and a perception issue, then that's usually when development teams like to step in, because then you're hurting on 2 fronts. If it's just one issue, then sometimes you can let it be for a bit, but we'll see. If we continue to have issues on both fronts, though, I think that's when you end up maybe getting some nerfs coming. But it still feels really early to talk about that. I think people should stop complaining.
Yep. So we will follow this development in our dueling worlds ourselves. So
yes, yeah, I'll let you know when people should start complaining. The official okay for when it's enough time.
Lose your next duel, okay, it's time.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Once I actually play some PvP, since I've only played a few games since the set came out. Once I lose to it a few more times, then it'll be okay, guys.
I have beat it enough that I'm not on the complaint train yet. Like, I've just Paleozoic Canadian or used Offerings to the Doomed on the first thing I see, and then I win the game sometimes, so I'm not there yet.
Yeah. We'll see.
All right. Yep. So finally, upcoming news. Tag Duel Tournament's coming on the 8th, so only a few more days to wait for that new event. We're getting Starlight Road along with some other cards. It's probably be like Yugi, Jaden, and Yusei now, so now they're adding a new step. Epic Yami. First thing with Yami, first special duel with Yami, we're getting their Magician of Dark Illusion. The 2nd anniversary campaign is happening. Hopefully you get a ton of gems from that. Sector Security is back. New Trudge skill, new Trudge cards as well. We got to obtain Jack Atlas at the end of the month, and finally the Duel-a-Thon as well.
Nice. Looks like some fun stuff to look forward to, and we'll see how it all goes.
Yep. When Koa'ki Meiru completely takes over, there's some other stuff to do. Basically, that's what.
Yeah, that's how it is.
That's how it is. All right. So thanks for listening to us. Listen and subscribe anywhere: iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Overcast, YouTube, and Spotify. Check out the podcast and more at our website, theduelassessment.wordpress.com, Facebook, facebook.com/theduelassessment, Patreon, patreon.com/duel_assessment. Email us with any questions at theduelassessment@gmail.com, or better yet, find us on Twitter, duel_assessment, me at Green Ranger CCG, DeckTech@HS, DeckTech.
Yep, we love to hear from you guys there, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. See you guys.